Welcome in to signing day on Stadium. We got a special edition of a little football show coming your way here. I know a lot of you tune in following college football, and we're going to introduce you to the stars of tomorrow. I am joined by T-Bob Hebert. You can see him here every day on Stadium. I'm Joshua Perry, and we want you to get involved in this show as well, like we do on the other programs. You scan that QR code on your screen, submit the content. We want the YouTube chat. We need you to ask us some questions today because we definitely got a lot to get through. Also follow us on Instagram at Watch Stadium. Before we get started, T-Bob, how you feeling today?
I'm feeling great, man. I'm feeling great. So it's interesting. I think generally when it comes to recruiting, Joshua, when you talk to former players, a lot of players kind of poo-poo the idea of recruiting, right? Like, I was a 2-star, and look at me, I end up in the NFL. I'm yeah, screw these guys. What do they know, right? And then fans a lot of times go crazy about recruiting. It, makes their year. I believe the truth to be somewhere in the middle, right? I am a firm believer that when it comes to recruiting, the micro, I don't care as much about. Like, individual players go boom or bust all the time, but the macro matters. Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, they're top 3 every year. Why are they top 3 every year on the football field? Because they get the best football players. And then even to get into a bit more nuance, even though some people will poo-poo 5 stars, I think they do matter. 5 stars tend to go to the NFL more than anybody else, right? So there is some nuance here, but I'm very excited to dive into all of it.
No, it's going to be a fun show. And as we start to get into it, you mentioned you're a great football player once upon a time. What do you remember about your signing day?
It was awesome, man. And I think that's what else gets kind of lost in this a lot of times is that we love our schools so much that we cheer for, that's all we view this through is the lens of how is my school doing. And you do lose sight for that. A lot of these cats, this is an incredibly special day. This is a day where you know that your school will be paid for. And granted, maybe some of that is lost now because they're also going to make hundreds of thousands of dollars. But yeah.
Whoa! Wow.
Oh, man, what a picture. Look, that's the GACS Sparks right there. Screw Buford. But no, it's look, it's a day where you, your family, your community, your high school, you all come together and you say, this is the place where I'm going to try to make my dreams come true. And I remember on my Sunday, it was awesome. All the top recruits in Georgia, we got to go to this event at ESPN Zone, which was basically Dave & Buster's with an ESPN flair, and they gave us unlimited game cards. And I'm an arcade nerd. I used to live playing Derby Owners Club at Dave & Buster's back then, and all of a sudden I'm getting an unlimited game card at ESPN Zone. Yeah, so I was there for probably 3 hours, just getting it.
Good for you, honestly. My signing day was spent on Ohio State's campus because I was an early enrollee, and I felt like I was in hell that day. It was a terrible day for me, but we got to get to it. We got to talk about the nation's top recruit, and he, of course, is the wide receiver Jeremiah Smith, and you know exactly where he's going. That is the Ohio State University. Now, he's joining a program that has a great, especially recent tradition and history of wide receiver play. So what should the expectations be for Smith as he enters his college career?
You use the word great, Joshua. I mean, that's it. Greatness, right? Why would it be anything else? I watch the New Orleans Saints every Sunday. I see Chris Olave dominate, even with a putrid Saints offensive line. Pete Carmichael calling plays and Derek Carr as his quarterback. I just watched Jackson Smith and Jigba come up with a huge game-winning touchdown play on national television in the NFL. I just saw Marvin Harrison Jr. edge out Malik Neighbors for the Biletnikoff. This is the #1 player in the country. Brian Hartline's done an incredible job developing that position in Columbus. When you are the #1 receiver in the country and you commit to Ohio State in this modern day 22, you understand that context. And the context is be great. Nothing less will be acceptable. This is kind of opposite of Dylan Raiola, right? Where when he goes to Nebraska, he just, they'll take anything. You make a bowl game, they're going to be excited. No. This needs to end in a Biletnikoff for Jeremiah Smith. And that's a ton of pressure. But, hey, I mean, he looks like he may be talented enough to live up to that.
Yeah, I'm definitely there with you, right? Like, I don't think that you're a wide receiver who goes to Ohio State just to be another guy on that roster. I think part of his expectation is I got to play early and then I got to become one of the best in the game. And I know that he's counting on development from a guy in Brian Hartline, who also spent some time in the NFL after his career at Ohio State, to kick in there. And I think there's also this idea of what being in that room does. Because every day in practice, you're going to be competing with and against some of the best wide receivers in college football, and hopefully some of the best defensive backs in college football as well. And so you get to sharpen your edge that way if you're a guy in Jeremiah Smith coming in.
What do you think? So a lot of talk about Ohio State's culture coming in. Okay, obviously the 3 losses in a row to Michigan, there's some frustration there. But, and even coming into today, a lot of talk like, oh, well, this guy flip. Well, this guy flip. Is Ezra Houston going to flip? Is Jeremiah Smith going to flip? They seem to have retained pretty much everybody they wanted for the most part. What do you think his signing says about the culture in Columbus right now?
Yeah, it's interesting. Everybody being on flip watch, I think, was a tough one. And of course, when you're not in the college football playoff and you're a team that expects to be there, and when you didn't win a Big Ten championship and you expected to do it and didn't beat Michigan and you expected to do it, people negative recruit that, and I totally understand it. I think the ability to retain their class, I think, speaks to the type of people that are in there and the belief that the young people have that they will be developed into the great players they want to be. I also kind of look at what's happening with Ohio State players currently on the roster, still practicing and preparing for a bowl game that a lot of guys would have opted out of. I think they love their teammates. I think they love their coaching staff. I think they love being in Columbus. Now, the idea of being able to, retain a top wide receiver does nothing for me in terms of culture, because I figure that, that's good business from a long-range perspective, right? And so maybe if they would have gone out and, flipped one of the top offensive linemen in the country, it could have said something a little bit different. But typically good to see when you can keep the top guys committed in your class. And, of course, Ohio State's putting together the top-ranked class in the Big Ten with 5 players ranked in the top 60 nationally, including the highly touted quarterback, Air Noland. And to get the real inside scoop on what's going on today, let's welcome in Alan True, who covers Midwest football for 24/7 Sports. And I want to talk about my Ohio State Buckeyes and their class right now. They've got the top player in the whole class of 24. But overall, what is the strength of the incoming guys for Ryan Day's class?
Yeah, I think it is in the skill positions. Jeremiah Smith is a big piece of that. He's going to come in right away and I think be able to help if Marvin Harrison Jr. does go pro. I mean, he's going to offset that loss right away. It was a close race for #1 player in the country. We don't take that lightly, and he finished as the top player in that class. So he's going to be joining up with quarterback Aaron Noland, who we think has a ton of upside, talent, fits the system extremely well. So the strength right away, offensive side of the ball, I think this class is going to help them put up some points.
All right, let's look at Nebraska here. I think a lot of people were surprised by what they've been able to put together so far. How was Matt Rule able to get this class to come together the way it did?
Yeah, I mean, I think for one thing, persistence, he kept chipping away at it, especially with Dylan Raiola, who's the big part of the class. But they also are really good recruiters. And you saw that right away when they took over last year. You saw some signs. They got on the trail right away. They have NFL backgrounds, with kids want to hear. They know how to look for NFL traits and find those when they're evaluating high school prospects. And so they were able to start recruiting this class a little bit earlier. So I think a lot of recruiting is building relationships and its determination and effort. I think this class has a lot of that. Coach Rule really resonates with those guys. But I also think that NFL background, which isn't just with him, it's present throughout the staff, certainly resonates with a lot of recruits as well. That doesn't hurt when you're recruiting players on the trail.
Lugard Adepaye, edge rusher, a guy who many people have their eyes on for today, still awaiting his decision. Michigan's in there, Maryland's in there, but what's the latest on his recruitment?
Yeah, so I think that's a done deal for Michigan, and it's a really good pickup for them. And a guy who is, they've done a really good job of development on the defensive line. And this guy has as much clay to work with at that position as anybody almost in the country. 6'6", 225 pounds. Was a little bit of a late bloomer. Didn't have a ton of offers until his senior season. Comes from a basketball background. Really has all the tools you want: length, athleticism, and he's going to a place that has taken guys like that in the past and developed them into top Big Ten players and NFL prospects. So I think a really nice pickup for the Wolverines.
All right, let's turn to some of the new coaches here in the Big Ten. Jonathan Smith in his first year at Michigan State. What stands out about the class that he's putting together?
So right away, I think he took a lot of the Oregon State commits with him. which sounds easy to do, but you're having to convince high school kids to go from Corvallis, Oregon to East Lansing in a matter of a couple of weeks when a lot of them had never been to East Lansing prior to their official visit. So that just shows you their relationship with the staff and the trust in the staff to follow them from one corner of the country almost to the opposite end of the country. That's a big life change for these kids. And so that's how much trust they have in Coach Smith and their staff. He's done a great job of evaluation, found a couple of late sleepers in the Midwest, reached out to a lot of kids within the state of Michigan and built relationships with them, which even if it doesn't result in flips today, those relationships are going to carry into the next class. But they really left no stone unturned in the Midwest. And I think their relationships with the kids out west really showed through. I think this is going to be a really good recruiting staff moving forward. And you've seen good signs of that the first few weeks here.
Curt Cignetti in Indiana, they pick up 4-star quarterback Tyler Cherry. How big of an addition is this?
I think it's huge. I think when you start off your first class, that's one position you would like to have kind of the face of your class as. And Tyler Cherry was committed to Duke. Michigan State did come in and try to recruit him late, as did a couple of other schools. But that's a big win right there. Coach Cignetti and his staff have had tremendous success on the offensive side of the ball and with quarterbacks. And Tyler Cherry is super talented. I don't know that he'll play right away, but certainly I think he's a future. They're counting on him to be the future guy under center, and I think he has star potential for them. So if you're going to have one big get late in a cycle for a new coach, I think quarterback's one of the positions you would want it at.
All right, let's go from new coaches in the Big Ten to new teams in the Big Ten. Oregon comes in with the number 2 class in the conference right now. They're headlined by a couple of transfers in Dante Moore and Dillon Gabriel. But in terms of the high school guys, what kind of guys is Oregon bringing into their program?
Yeah, some of those quarterbacks in the Big Ten will not like that Oregon is joining in because this is a really good defensive line class. You have 2 5-stars in the defensive line class in Aiden Breland and Elijah Rushing. Breland, an inside guy, Rushing, an outside guy. Then you have Sione Leula, who is the number 2 junior college prospect in the entire country, a cornerback who at 6'4" has run sub-11 in the 100 meters. So a couple of really outstanding athletes on the defensive side of the ball. So you talk about those transfer quarterbacks. Oregon's known for scoring points, but I think it's these defensive additions that are really exciting if you're a Ducks fan.
Meanwhile, USC is coming into the Big Ten with the top 5 class in the conference. They grab a couple of guys out of the Midwest. So do you see them as kind of extending their reach now more into the Midwest as they transition into the conference?
Yeah, I think they're going to try to. You know, they, like you mentioned, they flipped Desmond Stevens, a kid from the state of Michigan who was committed to Boston College. Jide Abasiri from Minnesota was committed to Minnesota, so they're already dipping into Big Ten country. They've also always come out here a little bit. You know, when I first started covering recruiting, they were out here recruiting Ronald Johnson and Nick Perry and guys like that. So they've always expanded out this way. Now I think they'll have more reason to do that. Obviously, they have a great base of home talent in California, so they're not going to need to always stray too far away, but you can already see the signs that they're going to at least come out here a little bit and make life hard for these Big Ten teams trying to hold on to their commitments.
All right, last one here for you, but you've covered recruiting for a while. You covered part of my recruitment, Jake Butt. You covered part of his recruitment. So you've seen the ins and outs of what goes on for these high schoolers trying to make their decision. But we've talked about name, image, and likeness on this show. We've talked about the transfer portal. How has NIL shifted the recruiting game from your standpoint?
Well, it's certainly a factor, and now it produces some late changes. You even talk about, when we talked about Jeremiah Smith today, he was, considering some schools late, and these schools are going to throw attractive NIL packages at these kids. He said, that wasn't a factor in his recruitment, and I believe him, but these schools are going to at least make that attempt. You see that certainly in the portal with guys who can find better NIL packages at other schools and then try to leave their current school. And so I think it's now a major factor. I do think that it is mostly for the top end kids, though. You're talking about the tops of each class where NIL is a factor. For the most part, for 90% of the kids who signed today, NIL is a very small factor or no factor. They're still picking the school for where they can get developed, where they want to go to school, and the relationships with the coaching staff, the chance to win, the chance to go to the NFL. I think those things don't change for the majority of high school coaches, but when you're talking about the top end blue chippers, there's no doubt that NIL has become a major factor.
It's a really good insight there. I know it's a conversation we've been having, people will continue to have, but definitely appreciate your thoughts there and appreciate your time here today on the National Signing Day special. That's Alan True from 24/7 Sports. Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, we're going to talk to a couple of guys who'll be headed to Iowa City, the future of the Hawkeyes. They're waiting in the wings. And later, we'll let T-Bob dish on one of the biggest surprises from the SEC. Could there be a shakeup in the conference? Find out right here on Signing Day on Stadium. got signing day right here on Stadium. I'm Joshua Perry. I'm joined by T-Bob Hebert virtually. And as promised, we got a couple of guys who will be playing in Iowa City next year. A pair of offensive linemen. I know T-Bob is really excited about that. We've got Bodie McCaslin and Will Nolan. Fellas, first off, congratulations. And how are you two doing?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. It's been a fun week, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. I'm doing great.
So. Awesome. Well, let's get it kicked off here. I mean, offensive linemen, we know the tradition there at Iowa. The guys up front, really good. I remember playing them in 2013. I'm like, these dudes are humongous. Was that the attraction to the program, or when you walked in there, was there something else that said, I have to be here?
Yeah, for me, it was like on my first visit, I went there not really knowing like what I was as a player, so I saw them. And they were just a bunch of huge men, and it's just like I'm like I want to be a part of that. So I kind of got attracted to just being that large guy and just wanted to like be a part of that.
Same thing with you?
Yeah, same thing with me. It was just seeing like all the personality in the room, also, and just like how physical they practice was just me. So yeah.
Bruh, I mean, look, y'all wonder why I was so good on the offensive line. That's the KISS method, boys. Keep it simple, stupid. It's like everybody's watching Reacher out there on Amazon right now. You know how Reacher saves the day? Because he's big as hell. And you know how you push people around? Just by being big and corn-fed. And look, boys, I was an O-lineman too back in the day. And like I told y'all during the break, to me, outside looking in, I'm down here in the South, but nothing says O-line like Iowa and the Big Ten. What are you guys most excited for when it comes to taking the field in a conference that's going to get crazy next year? I mean, a lot of good talent being added to that group.
Yeah, for me, it's just like you just get a chance to be in a place where you can just compete your ass off every day and just go at it with a bunch of big dudes and have the personality like no one else, because all those guys are great guys. I love being around them.
Yeah, I'm just ready to go compete, play at a higher level and maybe smash some people while I'm at it.
I love this. I mean, you guys in the trenches are built so differently. I played linebacker, so it's not to say that I wasn't a little bit crazy. It might still be a little bit crazy, but the big guys up front just do it different. But I wanted to ask you about something a little outside of the realm of football. I was a multi-sport athlete. I love track and field. I geek out over that kind of stuff. I know that both of you participated in some throwing events in track and field in high school. So we'll start with you. But what's the secret to being a good thrower?
It's really just getting angry. I just every time I have that thing in my hand, it just comes from the gut. Like days when I'm not angry, it goes 10 feet less. So yeah.
Yeah, for me, I started yelling during it. So for shot put, I just yell as soon as I huck it, and then it goes far.
This is good stuff. T-Bob,
Boys, I've done a lot. I've done a lot of interviews in my life. And the amount of meathead that is seeping out of the studio right now, I am so jealous that I'm not a part of it. All right, I'm going to ask you boys a bit of a tough one, and either one can start. But look, self-evaluating, right? When you think about making the jump to the next level, and I believe, maybe this is self-serving, but I believe O-line is the hardest position to transition to, right? Like, a lot of times you need physical development. You got to get bigger, stronger. I needed a full 2 years before I was ready to start, whatever. When you look at your game now, and then you look at some of the guys you visited that you've talked with, what do y'all feel is maybe going to be the biggest adjustment that you're going to have to make in taking that leap from high school to college?
I'd say it's just getting a lot stronger. Right now, I'd say I got to build my lower body way more and be able to brace that and handle another 280-pound dude coming at me, because usually I'm just going against other high schoolers, and they're not typically as big as another college D lineman. So you just got to prepare strength-wise the most, and that's what I'd say is for me.
I'd say mostly just the speed of the game. I went to the U.S. Army Bowl this weekend, and just some of the speed there was something I wasn't used to and I hadn't seen in high school. So, that's probably be the biggest thing for me.
I would say those two things definitely stand out. I think we both went through that same process, but it took me a while to get my body ready to play college football, specifically in the Big Ten where it is physical. So you just got to commit to it, and you'll be able to do it. But before you leave us, you guys are going to be teammates now, and so we got to play a little game, a little icebreaker, get to know each other. So I'm going to count to 3, and then you're going to say the first thing that pops into your head, and we'll see if anything matches. So first one is favorite food. 1, 2, 3.
Steak.
Jersey Mike's cheesesteak.
Okay, all right. So we got the cheesesteak guy.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, we got the regular steak guy, but this is big dudes up front. They're probably not entirely too picky. Okay, favorite movie. 1, 2, 3.
Step Brothers.
What was yours?
Like the Avengers movie.
Okay, and you had Step Brothers.
Hell yeah. Solid choices, boys. I love these cats.
Let T-Bob take that one. Those not in my top 3 for either one. Okay, finally, favorite pregame hype song. 1, 2, 3.
Welcome to the jungle.
Oh, okay. So we got a couple of good ones there. Oh man. Well, I know you guys will. Go ahead.
How about this, boys? This is not a 1, 2, 3 answer, but I want you both to give me your go-to Chinese food orders. What are we working with here?
I'm orange chicken and lo mein. That's my go-to. Just
Okay, hell
load it
yeah,
up.
dude.
I'm a big California rolls guy.
Okay.
So.
Oh, wow. Okay, a little bit of a fancy answer there. Okay, I'm a sesame seed chicken, fried rice, maybe a couple egg rolls on that thing myself. All right, boys. Hey, thank you, Bodie. Thank you, Will. Congratulations to both of you. This is where the next phase of your journey starts. Go be big as hell. Go get strong as hell. Go get pissed and go cause some pain in the Big Ten, boys. We look forward to watching you play. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Speaking of the Big Ten, let's get back to these classes. And oh my God, would you look at this? I mean, if this doesn't get you excited for the future, our Uber Conference future in the SEC and the Big Ten, these are not the national rankings. These are just the Big Ten recruiting rankings. Via 247 Sports, you got Ohio State at 1, Oregon 2, Penn State 3, Michigan still somehow maybe unwilling or unable to capitalize off of their great on-field success, coming in at 4. USC barely holding on at 5, but would you take a look at number 6? And I know I'm down here in the South, Joshua, but they call me T-Cobb for a reason, and that's because I am the Southern representative of the Corn Hub. I am a huge
Boy, you're nasty,
Matt Rule
first
believer. I was so happy when I saw the Dylan Raiola commitment. They were getting McCord in for visits. Where do you stand in your evaluation of what Matt Rule's building at Lincoln?
Well, first off, I think that he is making a concerted effort to build a program that should be taken seriously in the modern day of college football, and I'm all for that. I don't want to put expectations that he's going to build some national contender and this superpower out there in Nebraska, because I'm not exactly sure that that's what they're going to be. But what they can be is a respectable program. What they can be is a program that could be knocking on the door of a 12-team playoff at some point. What they can be is a program that is to be taken seriously from a competitive standpoint by everybody they face. The last few years, Nebraska has been a joke because you knew if it was a close game, you were probably winning it. They couldn't finish it off. And I think Matt Rule is trying to get the talent there. I know what he's been telling the dudes that are already on the roster in terms of their mentality, and he's created alignment too with the administration so they can go out and do the things that they want to do. So I've been impressed overall by his approach so far.
Yeah, and look, I think that even though this season ended in a lot of the same ways, in a lot of the same painful ways that recent Nebraska campaigns have, all they got to do is solve turnovers. Like, if you actually engage with the games and watch the games, they were a better team. They just have to not turn it over. They need a quarterback. Dylan Raiola seems to check those boxes. We will see.
All right, well, let's flip it over to the SEC here. We're talking about surprises. I think you can talk about some surprises down there. Coming in at number 6 in the conference is Auburn, who plenty of people had forgotten about. Not Brooke Fletcher, who you can see on the stadium clubhouse, but everybody else forgot about Auburn. So, T-Bob, I mean, Auburn's on the cusp of putting together a top 10 class. But what's next for Hugh Freeze's program?
So this is the deal with Hugh Freeze. I know the year one results leave a lot to be desired, though they should have beaten Alabama. But one thing he has, the greatest strength that Hugh Freeze has had on the Plains thus far, is Auburn is one of those schools like an A&M where there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen. And it leads to a lot of discord, a cacophony, a disconnection. Hugh Freeze, for the first time that I can remember, and since I've been watching Auburn, has everybody rowing in the same direction. He has buy-in from the fan base, from the boosters. They have a lot of NIL money to spend. He's always been a great recruiter, and you're seeing it now as it's paying dividends. I mean, already jumping LSU in these recruiting ratings ahead of Oklahoma, flipping the number 1 player in North Carolina, defensive lineman Mars Williams from Florida, almost getting The 5-star safety that just flipped to Georgia. Like, Hugh Freeze has Auburn in rooms that they have no right being in, and it's because they got all this positive momentum.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing that you and I both said is the alignment that is being created and the momentum that's being pushed in the same direction for Nebraska and for Auburn right now. I think it's one of the most important things that nobody talks about, but everybody is on the same page there. Today is the only day of the year where anybody uses a fax machine. It is National Signing Day, and we have all of the coverage right here on Stadium. We're going to take a quick break, but make sure you stick around. A lot more to talk about. We're back. It's National Signing Day here on Stadium. T-Bob Hebert is joining me. I'm Joshua Perry, and we know what the story of 2024 is going to be. It's going to be conference realignment, and in the SEC, that means the additions of Texas and Oklahoma. T-Bob, how do you think those programs impacted recruiting in the SEC this year?
You know, I don't know that I think that there was a massive impact recruiting-wise this year, Joshua, simply because you've kind of always been competing with Texas and Oklahoma for a lot of these same guys. And the other thing is that you know how like people will talk about the state of Texas, right? Not really realizing how big it is. Well, that applies to recruiting. Like if you go look up the last 5 years of recruiting data and you look at A&M, Oklahoma, and Texas, all three consistently finish in the top 10, and they're all three getting all their recruits from the state of Texas. So like there's enough to go around from a recruiting perspective. One thing that I think will potentially change over time is that now that Texas and Oklahoma are in the SEC, they can start to sell that to recruits, right? No longer will you be shuttled off to the Big 12 and not be on the biggest stage and not play against the best players. Now you get to come and play right along with the Big Ten in the league that's going to have more eyeballs on it every single weekend than any other. You get to prove yourself against other NFL prospects and, by extension, help your own NFL prospects. So I don't think we've seen those effects quite yet, but long term, I think it's a boon to both Texas and Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean, I think the competitive nature of those programs coming into the SEC, which is obviously hyper competitive, the concentration of talent down there in the South, I don't know about the recruiting aspect, but to your point, when these guys get all on the field, you're going to see the impact of it for sure. But you start to look at maybe an expectation for year one, Texas or Oklahoma, who do you think is going to have the easier time?
Bro, I think it's Texas by a mile, man. Oklahoma's replacing their entire offensive line. Dylan Gabriel, they just kind of forced out the door to Oregon for the 5-star Jackson Arnold. Already, Texas has a better recruiting class next year. They got Quinn Ewers returning next year, like two teams opposite directions, I think, and a much more favorable schedule for the Longhorns. So I think that's Texas. Now, allow me to flip the script to the red corner, blue corner. In the Big Ten, you've got Oregon, USC, Washington, UCLA joining the fray. Has that affected recruiting at all?
I don't think directly. It's a very similar thing. I think from the standpoint of the coast-to-coast nature of it, right, I thought that you saw some recruiting battles maybe developed, and we talked earlier in the program about USC maybe going after a few more guys from the Midwest. I know that all the teams in the Big Ten have liked to recruit out in California when they can. So that's a natural thing. I maybe look at Oregon as a team. You know, they flipped a wide receiver from Ohio State's class today. I'm sure that they would love to be able to do something like that every year to whoever's got the top class in the Big Ten that's over on the other side of the nation. And so from that standpoint, I do think that they're trying to make sure that they can plant flags in the Midwest, but it's pretty much all the same too.
Yeah, I'll say this in terms of how these teams are going to translate. Even though Washington is the better team this year, without a doubt, and I love Kalen DeBoer and I love what he's building there, Oregon's starting to look pretty scary, man. They got a young coach that gets it, that has the it factor in Dan Lanning, and the big difference is like Kalen DeBoer has it as well, but you don't have Phil Knight. And you don't got Nike, right? Like he'll never have the resources at Washington that Oregon does. So I think combined with the new TV revenue, Oregon probably the biggest threat entering the Big Ten out of that those 4 Pac-12 teams.
Yeah, when I saw what they did getting Dylan Gabriel and then adding Dante Moore for insurance into the future, I'm like, they see the bigger picture, and they talked a really good kid into really developing there behind a veteran guy. Like the whole thing makes a ton of sense, especially when you add the Nike money in there. But we're going to take another break right here on the Signing Day special. And coming up, Luke Fickell is going to be entering year 2 in Madison. It looks like he's found a wrestling guru to help the cause. So meet one of his newest Badgers on the other side of this break. Welcome back. We got the signing day special right here on Stadium. T-Bob Hebert joining me. I'm Joshua Perry, man. Let's get to talking.
Joshua, look, man, I should apologize, right? You basically held the door for me earlier, asking me about my signing day and how rude of me to not return the favor. Joshua Perry, what do you remember about your signing day? You alluded to it maybe not being the most fun day of your life.
Miserable. So I had early enrolled at Ohio State, so I didn't participate in like a traditional signing day. It was back when the real signing day in February was going on, so we didn't have a December thing. So I didn't do one in December because it didn't exist. And then I'm like going back to my high school, which is 30 minutes away from campus, on the February signing day. But my coach is like, nah, bruh, you need to make sure you get a 6 a.m. workout. And I was dying. I was physically in pain. It was cold because it's February in Ohio. And so that is how I spent my signing day.
Oh my God, I cannot fathom running outside in Ohio. I'm used to that 100-degree weather. So who was that strength coach? Who would have had you up at 6 a.m.?
Oh, it was all of them. It was so bad. And we used to do the outdoor thing too in January. Like, I'm not going to get into it. One of the guys who was participating in some of these workouts and making us feel miserable was Luke Fickell, who was one of my former coaches at The Ohio State University. And he's put together a solid class over there at Wisconsin, which includes 7 4-star prospects. And topping that list is a defensive lineman. His name is Dillon Johnson. And I got to catch up with him earlier this week. Here's a part of our conversation. Dillon, thanks for joining us.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So wanted to talk about your signing day. I think it's going to be a little bit different than most. Typically, the guys have the announcement at the schools and they're putting on the hats. But for you, you got to wrestle. All right. So tell us a little bit about what you got going on.
So tomorrow, there's obviously like the real signing that happens early in the morning. But then the school, we're just having like a little ceremony for my friends and family. And then right after that, we have to leave to go to Oklahoma for a wrestling meet.
Now, you're getting ready to go play for Luke Fickell at Wisconsin. He is a guy who's got wrestling in his background, so I know he understands how important that sport is for you. You're going to play football and wrestle in college. How was your conversation with Coach Fickell different from other conversations you had with other schools?
It's a bit different just because, of course, there is the wrestling piece of it, but he talked about his own experience as a wrestler. He was a wrestler before in high school and a little bit in college. So we can kind of just talk about how wrestling helped him as an individual and how it helped him out. And so most of our conversations have been about football, but he has been advising me that he thinks that I should do both wrestling and football. He feels as if that it would be like a mistake if I don't try it.
You ever get into a argument back and forth with Coach Fickell about who would win right now in a wrestling match?
Oh, no. We haven't talked about it, but we have joked around a bit, a little bit here and there about it, step on the mat and all that.
Now, you said that he told you what wrestling did for him. What did he share in those conversations about the athlete that made him?
He just talked about, like, the experience of wrestling, like the grit, the toughness that comes with the sport. Wrestling is a different type of conditioning. It is a lot. You play football, you go straight into wrestling. So he just talked about how that transition just overall just made him like a better athlete.
Now, let's talk about Wisconsin as a football program. Obviously, a storied history there, but what attracted you to Madison, Wisconsin?
The thing that attracted me the most to Madison, Wisconsin was just that it had everything that I could want in like a college. The sports were great. The people there were great. I had a lot of coaches. It was close to home for my family and everything. So overall, it just hit a lot of the right boxes.
Now, you mentioned that family and your dad and your older brother have some ties to professional football. So is there any advice that they've given you about what you're getting ready to embark on through your college career?
My dad is constantly talking to me about how college football is a lot different than high school football. So what he wants most of all is just for me to really, get in there and do the work, but also make sure this is something that I'm going to enjoy. And he's been having me talk to my brothers. They've been sharing advice about their experience and everything. So they're just really focusing on that, like the transition from high school to college is as best it can be for me.
All right, last one before I get you out of here. But if you could pick one thing that you're looking forward to most about your collegiate career, what would it be?
Just playing football and having the time of my life out there.
All right, Dillon, really appreciate your time and best of luck in Madison.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, we're going to wrap up some of the biggest moves from today. Signing day on Stadium continues in just a bit. It is signing day on Stadium, and we got to talk about Prime, right? I mean, if we're going to be talking about some college football, he's going to be a part of the conversation. And listen, he's focused on the transfer portal, does have a trio of 4 stars headlining his recruiting class, but certainly a different approach for a program that is trying to build. It's the build versus the microwave it question. But let me back here with T-Bob Hebert, and I got to ask you, just in terms of Prime and what he's built and what he said about what he's trying to build, from a football roster team standpoint, how much pressure is going to be on Prime in year 2?
Well, there's a ton of pressure because with attention comes pressure, right? They go part and parcel, they go hand in hand. Again, Deion Sanders is someone who understands this better than I could ever even speak to, right? He has lived with this pressure and this spotlight throughout his entire life. He lived through this last season. I am a big-time Prime believer because I believe in the substance of Deion, right? I think he's still a young coach. I don't think he's a complete coach, but I like everybody gets all obsessed with the flash, but they ignore the substance. Like they get obsessed with the headlines, but they ignore the videos where you actually see him coaching on the football field, and he's talking about practice habits and the standard that you're going to be expected to be held to. So I am investing in Deion in the long term. That said, I feel like you got to do a little more on the high school recruiting front here. As you said, 3 4-stars, that's quality. But right now, dead last in this new 16-team Big 12, only 6 commitments. And you can build through the portal. Look at Ole Miss, right? Like, there are different ways to do this thing. Ole Miss right now is saying, you know what, all this NIL money, we're just going to commit it to somewhat known quantities. We're going to bring in free agents. We're going to try to make it work. And I like how Deion's done in the portal in terms of adding offensive linemen, trying to flip that group completely, because if they get a little bit better, the team should be much, much better. That said, I just feel like you need more meat and sinew right now, just more bodies, quite frankly. And I'll be interested to see how Deion kind of learns to manage the roster over the next couple of years. Because when it comes to coaching football, I have no doubt that he is very good at that portion.
It's I think it's a really interesting thing with Prime, because I agree with a lot of what you're saying in terms of substance, and he's been there before, and he's got kids that are in the program, and so of course he's approaching it a little bit of a different way. I think that you can build a strange culture, though, and I'm not going to say a bad culture, but a strange culture from emphasizing the portal too much, because these are kids who already ran once upon a time. For whatever reason, they left. And these are kids who are there, I think, for a very utilitarian reason, and it's unemotional, which I think can be good in some regards, but I also think that football is an inherently emotional sport, and rivalries are emotional, and you're supposed to be able to think about the team that whooped your ass the year before and walk into the locker room as you're prepping for that game and say, you remember what they did to us? We're not going to let it happen again. The guys are like, no, I don't remember, because I was off somewhere else. We weren't a part of that.
No, bro, nowadays these kids transfer to that school. They leave and they go to that school. That's the wild part to me.
Yeah, I mean, they do that. But it's the idea, I think you understand of what I'm getting at, just in terms of he has to be very careful about how he instills culture, and also how he communicates with his locker room, I think, is going to be the biggest thing.
Look, and that's the same thing like Lane Kiffin, the same thing he's got going on at Ole Miss right now, right? The transfer portal class is incredible. Getting Princely Umanmielen, getting the top cornerback. I mean, just the weapons of Juice Wells. But, can you make it all work? Because as Joshua said, when you commit out of high school, you're still committing kind of for brand, maybe for love for the school. That Pirtle now, it's all about, okay, I'm trying to further my career.
All right, we're going to kick T-Bob off here, and we're going to talk a little bit about a coach who, he was once at Colorado, actually, as a player. Now he's running the Purdue Boilermakers, and that is Ryan Walters. It's going to be year 2 over there for him at Purdue, and he's hoping that this year's recruiting class can help the Boilermakers rise in the Big Ten ranks. So why not bring on one of the Purdue signees from this class, an athlete by the name of Luke Williams. And Luke, first off, really appreciate you joining us here today, and congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, you're listed as an athlete on 24/7, but have the coaches given you any indication of what position you might be playing once you get to campus?
Yeah, I'll be playing safety once I get to campus.
Now, I know that Ryan Walters, as a defensive guy, I've seen his structure certainly different. Did you want to be on that side of the ball, playing in that kind of aggressive defense?
Most definitely. With Coach Walters' mind, he has a great defensive mind. I feel like I can succeed in his defense.
Now, you had your share of schools to pick from, but obviously going with Purdue, why'd you choose Purdue?
Just the coaching staff. They have a great coaching staff over there, great young coaching staff, and all of them are in position, to make that university better. And they're not gonna leave. They're gonna be there for a minute.
Now, you are a guy who was an excellent hooper in high school, and obviously Purdue's got the great basketball tradition over there as well. Any conversations about maybe playing some hoops there too?
Jokingly, but not realistically, no.
All right, well, being a guy from the Chicago suburbs, I know that basketball is probably one of the more prominent sports in your life. Kind of when did you make that decision that you wanted to really pursue football as a sport you would play in college?
Really, my sophomore year, when the offers started coming in, kind of realizing that, this is reality, like football is what I'm better at. Now let's get to work. Let's start getting into the recruiting process.
Awesome. Well, Luke, it's been a pleasure talking to you today. Really appreciate your time. And once again, best of luck as you enter your college career. We'll be rooting for you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take another break over here on the signing day edition of this show. But we're going to look at the national stage here. We talked about it, recruiting trail, or are we getting in the portal? We'll discuss what's more important coming up on the other side. This is signing day on Stadium. Getting ready to finish up the show here. T-Bob Hebert joining me remote. I'm Joshua Perry, and we are joined in studio by Eddie Turk, heading to play for the Fighting Illini. Now, you dropped in. We were hoping we could get you. Didn't know if we would be able to get you, but give us a little rundown of your day so far. What's signing day been like for you?
It's been pretty chaotic, to be honest. Woke up at like 6:30, and then I went over to my high school, Lyons Township, signed at around 7 over there, and then I made everything official with the coaches at Illinois and around like 7:30, and then I took a couple finals, so I had to rush back to school.
Whoa!
Yeah, I've been at school. I literally just got out, drove over here, and you know, maybe hoping to get some lunch after this. But, yeah.
Okay, so I was going to say, another fine, strapping, giant young lad on the show today, 6'4", 280. What's for lunch? After a day like that, what's for lunch, bruh?
I was thinking maybe some Portillo's or Italian beef or something on my way home, but
Hell yeah, dude.
yeah.
Yeah.
Why the Illini? Why the Illini at the end of the day?
Honestly, you know, I had 3 official visits set up over the summer, one Northwestern, and then right after that to Illinois, and then I was supposed to go to Miami the week after that. And I committed on my official to, you know, at Illinois, and I had a great visit, and, you know, Illinois has been recruiting me, you know, they weren't the first school to come into my recruiting process, but, you know, they came in, you know, around halfway, and Coach Bielema and Coach Jameson and, you know, even Coach Miller, offensive line coach.
Yeah, no, it's a great thing. I know it's something that you're going to be proud of as you look back, but that'll do it for us right here. Signing day on Stadium. Eddie, appreciate you in studio. T-Bob, we'll catch you tomorrow.